For almost 30 years, trains from Paris to Brussels have been dominated by the high-speed Eurostar, formerly Thalys, who are infamous for their often high ticket prices and sold-out trains. Now, rail passengers finally have a greater choice between the two capitals with the introduction of the new Ouigo train classique, meaning your train from the French capital Paris to the Belgian capital Brussels can be as low as €10. I'll be taking you with me on this brand new service as we see whether you really get what you bargained for. Now join me as the journey continues. Bonjour from Paris-Gare du Nord, one of the 7 main railway terminal stations serving the French capital. The station here dates back to 1846 and, as the name suggests, primarily serves destinations north of Paris, be that in France or even further afield. Now this is a station I use quite regularly, yet I'm constantly amazed by the architectural designs at the entrance. A truly stunning sight to see before commencing a long distance or even a local trip. The inside is just as spectacular, with a rather grand roof design encompassing what is today Europe's busiest railway station. Serving over 200 million passengers annually, it's never a dull moment here, even on a Sunday morning when I was travelling. Paris Nord is well connected. Local metro and RER services are well signposted for connections across the city and the Île-de-France region, whilst long-distance intercity and high-speed TGV services serving the north of France can also be found here in Hall 1 as alluded to earlier, though many of you watching will know this station for Eurostar services to the UK, which are found on Hall 2 just above us. Speaking of Eurostar, you can also use Hall 1 to catch their continental high-speed services, now commonly known as Eurostar Red, from here to Brussels, Cologne and Amsterdam amongst other places. The majority of rail traffic between Paris and Brussels will be on these services, taking just under an hour and a half to complete the journey end to end for the fastest services. These Eurostar services, however, are extremely popular. They often sell out fast or become really expensive, but at least now there's an alternative available. Which is what we're here to catch today, the 0818 Ouigo train classique de Bruxelles Midi. Ouigo is the low-cost brand of the French National Railway SNCF, which started with domestic high-speed services in France in 2013. Since then, the brand has been a commercial success for SNCF and expanded internationally for the first time to Spain in 2021. 3 round trips per day between Paris and Brussels were launched in December 2024 as part of Ouigo's train classique or conventional offer, and follows a trial Eurocity service launched by both SNCF and Belgian state operator SNCB during the 2024 Olympic Games, with both companies continuing the service beyond the Games under the SNCF condition that the service runs under the Ouigo brand. Journey times are over twice as long as taking the Eurostar, which is reflective in the ticket prices. These are no higher than €59 and can be as low as €10 depending on demand, which is the price I paid for today's trip several weeks in advance. There are plenty of €10 fares available by the way, in some cases even a few days in advance, but my advice is to of course book ahead if you can to guarantee this. Being a low cost carrier, this is essentially a no-frills service. Tickets can only be bought online from SNCF, SNCB and the Ouigo app, the latter of which I recommend out of the 3, and not from the ticket machines or offices you see around the station, and there's no onboard catering. So you may want to pay a visit to some of the station shops to make the next few hours slightly more bearable, especially at this time of morning. There are also luggage limits in place as well, with only 1 carry-on allowed, so just bear in mind of that. By the time I finished at the shops, boarding commenced once the platform was announced around 20 minutes before departure. The Paris to Brussels Ouigo uses an SNCB Class 18 Siemens Eurosprinter electric locomotive, which hauls a rake of 8 SNCB Bombardier I-11 coaches, which are able to run pretty much anywhere in Europe, our countries of concern for today's trip of course being France and Belgium. Upon initial observation, I don't like how only some of the coaches carry the Ouigo livery, whilst others carry the standard SNCB livery. It doesn't seem very consistent to me and can come across as confusing to some passengers. I also have to say though, I love these coaches in the Ouigo colour scheme, but what do you think of it? Now I booked a Ouigo Essentiel ticket for this trip, however at the rear of the train is an XL seat carriage. This is similar to the Spanish Ouigo, where it's sold at a €5 premium. However, as this option was not available at the time of filming or release of this video, this was declassified for use by any passenger, so I chose to base myself here as it was a lot quieter than the rest of the train. This is laid out in a 2x1 configuration with large and rather comfy seats, as we'll see later. The normal Ouigo train classique to Brussels makes 3 intermediate stops, 2 in France at Claye and Aulnoy-Emly, and 1 in Belgium at Mons. Owing to engineering works, however, our train will only call at both French stations today, yet take half an hour longer, meaning we arrive into Bruxelles Midi after 3 hours and 22 minutes of travel, covering a distance of 303 kilometers. We leave Paris Nord right on time, and thanks to the absence of the control car at the rear of the set, we have a rather unique view of us leaving both the station and the rear Class 18 locomotive behind as we commence the near 3.5 hour journey north.
SNCB, à destination de Bruxelles Midi. Nous desservirons les gares de Creil, Aulnoy et Bruxelles Midi, son terminus. Je suis Stéphane, votre train manager. Je reste disponible pour toute information. N'hésitez pas à me solliciter lors de mes passages.
To the left as we leave Gare du Nord is Le Londi depot, responsible for providing maintenance to the large variety of TGV, Eurostar and to a lesser extent intercity trains that serve destinations out of the station. Saint-Denis is also passed shortly afterwards, one of the many suburban Paris stations we skip as we make our way out of the city. A pretty normal train journey to Brussels so far, right? Well, here's where things start to become different from the Eurostar service. We diverge to the left to instead travel on the lower speed conventional lines as opposed to the much higher speed LGV Nord, the last Paris to Brussels direct train to do this being the former Easy service Thalys used to run until 2021 when it was sadly discontinued. I have to say that as a regular Eurostar user in general, this feels pretty weird, but it's a refreshing change to take the slower route, especially for the price. But anyway, it's cheap, but is it cheerful? Let's move on to the interior. The XL seats are very, well, XL. They're incredibly spacious as well as plush with great ergonomics. Legroom is also very generous, though having the footrest tucked away will help ensure this unless you're on the shorter side, that is. Just above this you'll find a rather large tray table, which is perfect to work or watch movies from with devices of any size. A personal bin can be found just below the window, with coat hooks being found above as well as just below the overhead reading lights. You can also make use of the draw down window blinds if you want to get some sleep at this early hour of the morning, for example. The interior overall is rather basic, but it does the job, and for €10 as well, it's a lot more than I would be expecting. Great job, Ouigo! The first stop for our train is the city of Claye, which acts as an important railway junction for many railways in northern France and is known for the Château de Claye, with parts of it dating as far back as the 7th century. Keep an eye out on the left as well for the new Alstom RER NG sets, which will replace the older trains on the RER-D in due course, Claye station being the line's northern terminus. Daybreak approaches as we continue along the Claye-Jumonts railway through northern France towards the Belgian border. The line here is limited currently to 160 km per hour, which is 40 km per hour lower than the top speed of our I-11 and Eurosprinter consist. One thing I did think to myself as we progressed was that wouldn't it make sense for other large stations on this route, such as Compiègne and Saint-Quentin, to be alternately served by this new train? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments. Well, I've shown you the XL carriage, so here are what the remaining 7 standard I-11 carriages look like. These are in a 2x2 configuration with a mixture of airline and table seating, and one thing you may immediately notice about this carriage is that there are power sockets on the wall like this one here. I spoke about inconsistency with the livery application earlier, and the interior is no different. It seems some carriages got power sockets whilst others didn't. The XL Seats carriage, what will be the more expensive accommodation eventually, didn't have any power sockets at all, which is quite frankly a bit of a letdown considering it will cost an extra €5 to sit there, so this is something SNCF and SNCB really need to look at fixing. Nevertheless, you still won't be disappointed paying €5 less to sit here. Whilst the seats are slightly narrower, you can still expect the same comforts and amenities as the XL seats, meaning it's a great option for the over 3-hour journey to Brussels. Another observation is that I took this train around a month after this service was launched, and as you can see, it's very busy. To think a good chunk of these passengers would either be on a flight or a bus to Brussels instead had this Ouigo service not been available, so to see it this popular is a good thing and shows the demand is there. On that note, I should also mention that you can't make phone calls in the seating areas on most French trains, including this one, so as not to disturb other passengers, so you may want to make use of the many phone booths placed in the vestibules. Luggage can be stored using the rather generous overhead racks, though there is a distinct lack of space for larger items, I'm afraid. If you're smart, you might be able to fit in between the seats. Just make sure you're within Ouigo's luggage policies, of course. At the front of the train is the control car, which contains a wheelchair accessible toilet, which as you can see was rather clean fortunately. Just past this is the accompanying wheelchair accessible space, with a solo seat next to a vestibule for accommodating the additional space. Standard toilets can be found throughout the train, which are spacious enough despite being smaller than the accessible one. Each toilet also contains a coat hook as well as an electrical shaver socket. We now arrive into a rather snowy Unnoy-Emly, which whilst is normally the second stop of the trip, is our last stop today given the engineering works taking place in Belgium at the time of filming. The Paris to Brussels Ouigo makes this stop before crossing the French-Belgian border. As both countries are in the European Schengen area, there are no border formalities, though we do have a 5-minute dwell time here. After this, it's straight to the Belgian border and on to Brussels. The actual border crossing takes place not long after passing Jumeau, and whilst there are no physical signs or anything else fancy indicating the crossing, the best way to see this is by looking at the overhead catenary, as our train changes from France's 25 kV AC system to the 3 kV DC system used in Belgium. And here we are. Au revoir la France, bienvenue en Belgique. As mentioned several times in this video already, we won't be calling at Mons and instead divert onto the Brussels to Charleroi line 124, which takes a slightly longer route into Brussels than would otherwise be done had we taken the line 96 via Mons. The line speed here is slightly slower too, running between 120 km per hour and 140 km per hour compared to 140 km per hour and 160 km per hour on the original line 96. Regardless, that gives us more time to enjoy the snowy landscapes as we reach journey's end. So, what do I think? Honestly up there as one of my better value train trips in Western Europe. I was a bit sceptical at first given that €10 for a train journey between Paris and Brussels is almost too good to be true, but Ouigo has proved me wrong with this train and I would gladly use them again at these prices. I would say though that it is a shame that Interrail Pass users are not allowed to use this service, and the lack of consistency internally and externally with the I11 coaches used is annoying, but I guess I can't really complain much for the price. It's nice to have a slower, cheaper addition to the Paris to Brussels rail market now, and whilst Eurostar won't be significantly impacted, it will definitely get more people off of buses and domestic flights and onto the rail in the long run for sure. We now enter the city of Brussels and arrive into Bruxelles Midi or Brussels South Station, bang on time at 11:49.
De komen aan in het station van Brussel, ons eindstation.
Now you've heard from me, I want to hear from you. Have you taken the Ouigo train classique between Paris and Brussels yet? Would you take this train over the Eurostar or any other mode of transport between the two capitals for that matter? Let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and share it if you did to aid the channel's growth, as well as subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more content such as this weekly. Okay, time to go head off for lunch ahead of getting my Eurostar home. Thanks so much for coming with me on this trip, and I look forward to bringing you with me on my next one.